it's never a good idea to just risk it for the biscuit, not eat anything. You've just tuned into Rebel Wellness Podcast, your resource for realigning and revitalizing your health and well-being. I'm your host, Kaylee, also known as Coach Kales. I'm a holistic health educator, certified nutritionist, and fitness professional of nearly a decade. I'm stoked to have you with us. You just joined a community of amazing souls who are ready to break free from the confines of the often outdated and confusing health advice all around us. Living in a world overwhelmed by quick fix diets and unrealistic beauty and body standards, us rebels stand for change. If you're like me, you're exhausted with the confusion and polarization plaguing the social media health scene. My mission is to empower you to step beyond today's diet culture, adopt a holistic health approach paired with the foundations of science for lasting, well-rounded wellness. Through teaching you how to tune in and embrace your mind, body, and soul, we'll reject one-size-fits-all solutions, realigning you on a better path that honors your unique needs and values. With new episodes weekly, this podcast is your sanctuary for deep wellness exploration, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and a true commitment to your growth. Your journey to better health and simplicity in life begins now. Let's jump right in. Hello, I am back from Norway and I have a lot of interesting things to share with you today from the perspective of my pro tips on how you can best travel with more health-oriented habits. And so I just wanted to start though today and let you guys know that Norway is beautiful. And I feel like no one visits it. Maybe at least from my perspective, because like even my friend who has traveled to an insane amount of countries, like I think like 80 something countries or something like that, she's never been to Norway. And I actually don't know like very many people who've been to Norway besides my grandparents, but they go because they're Norwegian. So my grandmother, if you don't know about one half of me is very white. And that white involves Norwegian and German. There may be a little bit of something else in there, but as far as I know and they know, dominantly they are actually Norwegian. So this was actually a really fun trip for me. I got to go with my husband's family and we spent some time up in Norway and exploring kind of the Norwegian coastline. So we went all the way up to the top in Kirkenes, which they actually pronounce it as like Kirkenes. And then we went all the way down, bouncing around a bunch of little tiny, like honestly, like fisher villages practically. They're like actual towns and cities, but like they don't get Amazon 2-day there, that's for sure. But maybe for the better, you know, I got a lot of time to kind of observe that. And I have some thoughts here in a second, but we ended up in a bigger city for Norway called Bergen. And actually I was kind of amazed at how beautiful this city was. And like, I feel like I've never heard about it before, but there's like a ton of Michelin restaurants there and it's definitely got a lot of history and it's really cool. So, I mean, if anything, I think that's my favorite thing about travel is that I just get reminded how much of the world there is to see, how different everybody lives. Like honestly, Oslo and Bergen airports were so efficient and beautiful and clean and everybody kind of just stayed in their own lane, did the thing, you know. And it wasn't complicated. Like almost everything was automated. Like they hardly needed the people to like check the things. Like you scanned your passport, you went in. The TSA was really efficient. It had this really cool system where like it kind of like brought the little thing with a little conveyor belt, and if they wanted to double check your bags, it would just like push it to the back conveyor belt. It was really cool. They had something similar to that actually in the Gatwick, because we took a little stop through England on the way home. And that airport technically had something similar to that too, but it was definitely not as new or as clean. So I have no idea when Oslo built its airport, if they recently renovated it, and that's why it's so awesome. But I would definitely say number one favorite airport I've ever been to, as far as like everything being so efficient and clean and everything working and moving very nicely. Because if you're like a frequent traveler like me, like you can appreciate an airport that operates well. Like when we landed in Gatwick and we took off from Gatwick, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so chaotic. These bins feel like they've literally never been washed in maybe like 30 years. If you've ever been to a highly busy airport like Heathrow and all that, you know what I'm talking about, right? Even in the US, like a lot of our TSA could really do with a nice upgrade. Okay, so aside from airport talk, I think something that is really fun as well with travel that I enjoyed, especially with Norway, is that as I told a lot of my clients and, friends and whatnot that I was going to be going to Norway, they're like, okay, well, don't be excited about the food side to it because their food kind of sucks. And so I was like, yeah, it's more like dairy heavy because of like yogurts and cream and stuff. And then very like fish heavy because there's a lot more seafood and stuff. I mean, Norway is pretty much the whole coastline of that part of the continent for them. And so it was definitely a lot of fish, and there's definitely more vegetables and a lot of potatoes, honestly, a ton of potatoes, and, some bread products and whatnot. Pretty hearty bread, honestly. Like it didn't feel like bread like the US. I mean, nobody's bread is like the US. We have like the most bottom bitch bread, I swear. But I would say that everything I ate there, actually, I did really enjoy. I didn't I didn't do like the lutefisk, which is like fermented herring or pickled herring. I think lutefisk is technically fermented herring. I'm a little bit mixed up, but either way, that was not my favorite. It was very fishy. I was like, it's okay. I remember having it though when I was like a young child, and so that was my favorite thing about visiting Norway, was so many little things I had completely forgotten that my Norwegian grandmother had exposed me to. I forgot about that stuff until like I tasted like the lefse, which is just this really plain thin bread that they usually sandwich with just butter and sugar. And it was just like, we did this really awesome hike up to this interesting structure. Like it's like a mountain. It's called Torgatan, but it has like a giant like hole through it. So it's like a big archway, and then it's got this gorgeous view of the ocean and stuff on the other side. And that was the most interesting, like I think it was carved out by a like glacier and stuff. I'm not sure, but it basically is kind of a home for a lot of their troll stories. So Norwegian culture, a lot of their lore and like mythical stuff is based around trolls, mountain trolls. And I also had forgotten about that from my childhood until I experienced it. I even at this little knickknack store saw the same exact book from troll stories that my grandma had gotten us, that I had in my bookshelf my entire life. That was a children's book about trolls. And I saw it at the gift shop and I was like, oh my God, I had no idea that this was related to Norway. So, but anyways, yeah, so I really enjoyed our trip out there. It was a great time. I would say that the most fantastic reason to go to Norway, of course, is to see the Northern Lights, which is the main reason we went. Luckily, the first night we were up in Kirkenes, we were able to see the Northern Lights, because the whole rest of the trip, unfortunately, it was really cloudy on the cruise ship and whatnot. So I would, if you're somebody who wants to see the Northern Lights and also wants to explore somewhere like Norway, I would say probably go a little earlier in the season, maybe September, early October at latest, and then maybe check through and see when they have more of those traditional really cold but clear nights. When it's towards the winter half of the time, I guess that would be a really cold time though, so it depends on your cold tolerance, because it is above the Arctic Circle, the top half of Norway, so that's something to prepare for if you're going to do that. But anyways, that's kind of just the main things that I want to share with you guys from that trip that come off the top of my head. But I would say again, like the best thing that comes from travel is absolutely the worldview widening that comes from it, because you do realize that other people around the world live a completely different life than you. They have far less of the creature comforts that we have here in the US, and I think it's so easy for us to forget how much we have and how much we distract ourselves with here because we can, because everything has gotten really cushy, really comfortable, to some extent. And I mean, we can get like Amazon overnight. We can DoorDash stuff to our door in like 20 minutes from any restaurant of any cuisine that we like nearby. For a lot of us, you might be listening from a more rural town in the US. Obviously, there's a sliding scale when it comes to that. But speaking for those of us who live on the West Coast or the East Coast or a lot of the major cities in the US, it is just so different all the way across and up north in Norway. Even like, I spent time in Thailand a couple of years ago, time in Italy, the rural countryside out there. All these places have just reminded me just how much we do have here in the US and how different it is, for better or for worse. But honestly, like, it is really great. And I do very much encourage as many of you as possible to get out and explore. And I would also say, because I don't think I've ever really talked about this before on the podcast platform, but I've actually, spent time on a relief trip out to Haiti back in 2014, and spending time when you're traveling not to just the major tourist zones in like Mexico and a variety of other places that aren't first world, or, I know a lot of people are kind of like starting to adjust the terminology because we always have used first world, second world, third world. Seeing a spread of places across those different situations economically can help you develop a really well-rounded worldview of just what is going on everywhere else. And I've been very fortunate to orient a lot of the money I've made towards travel and trips. And then I've also been fortunate to be supported by family for certain trips, as well. And so those experiences have really led to the position where I am now, with better understanding the pros and the cons and reality of living where we live now and living where other people are living across the world, just south of us, just north of us, and just kind of feeling like, ultimately we do have a lot more than a lot of other places. And so we just always have to remember that it is completely different somewhere else, and someone else probably wants what we have here. So I just want to kind of remind you guys that travel can really enrich your life and enrich your mind and your perspective overall. That's all I have to say about my recent travels. And funny enough, I was trying to do a lot more reading and things like that on this trip, but I kind of found myself like very much up in my head and like observing the scenery going by, especially like while we had a lot of downtime on the cruise ship because the weather was so bad. We ended up skipping quite a bit of the stops that we were supposed to. So we ended up basically with like a ton of time on the boat, and it was pretty rocky at times too. So there was a little bit of seasickness involved. Luckily I didn't barf, but there was, that was a thing. But yeah, so there was a lot of times where I was like, okay, I'm going to totally finish this book and la, 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 la. And then I just was like, I would read and then I'd like float off in my head to somewhere else. And I'm touching on, or I'm checking in for you guys with like how my soft girl season is going. And I'm in this phase right now where I'm like I'm starting to become very hermity and like introspective, but at the same time, like daydreamy and like thinking of a lot of things. And I had read somewhere that when you go through kind of a quiet time, whether it's forced or it's chosen, and of course mine's chosen, you kind of get into a place where you are touching on stuff that you've been either ignoring or not had space to think about for a long time because you've created space, right? And so for me, I think I'm in the phase of like this soft girl season where I'm starting to really start the inner work and start the checking in through things that I've just kind of pushed aside for years and like sorting through it and then like moving forward. And there's definitely been some things that I've created some clarity, or I've communicated finally to people that I've needed to, or I've just internally let go of expectations I had set, and or trying to understand certain people and just knowing that like it's okay to never understand them and you don't have to make them understand you. It's just going to be what it's going to be, you know? And that's really freeing to some extent. I think for those of you who might be like me and we really want to make people understand our intentions or who we really are or where we're trying to go or our value or a variety of any of those things or more, it's really easy to feel like if you come across people or a person or any of that who imposes some other personality on you or tries to make you out to be a different way, you know, you have to remember that a lot of the times that is more reflective of their internal environment and how they view about themselves or how they view themselves versus who you really are, because who you really are is always going to kind of outshine that, or where you're really at is going to be where you truly know it is by if you stay true to yourself. You know, we lose ourselves when we try to convince people or, you know, whatever it is that we try to do when it comes to wherever we're getting this like pushback. There's been a lot of different things that I've just been kind of exploring as far as interpersonal relationships go. And I've really kind of noticed that. And I've came to that position where I'm like, you know what? It's actually better for my mental health to just like stop giving a fuck. like at the most like crude, straight face value way of saying it, just not giving a fuck. And there is that book, you know, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I did read that book and I do like it. And I think that that book, as well as my own like aha moments throughout my life, have really realized that you do have to just stop giving a fuck sometimes. And sorry for saying the F word so frequently. You know, I don't often cuss a lot, but that phrase is just so essential because I think you do just sometimes have to stop. And I definitely got the space, especially like through this vacation where I wasn't, you know, answering to clients or working on other little projects because I'm always fiddling around on things, that I actually really sat with that with certain people in my life that I've been, you know, kind of really wrestling with a variety of things, you know what I mean? With of avoiding getting too into details. But it is something where I hope that you, if this resonates with you, if this is something that you've been experiencing in your own life, that you can kind of sort through it and move through your soft girl season if you're also in one, or if you're choosing to be in one soon, that you really just kind of cut ties in your head with any level of control that you want to have when it comes to trying to change somebody's opinion or viewpoint on you or yours on them, or trying to prove yourself in any way, or trying, you know, whatever it is along those lines, you know, that is something that I think is really important. And I will end this little kind of long intro on some self-reflection here on one note that I have been reading a more philosophical book because your girl loves philosophy. If you didn't know that about me, I freaking love philosophy. Ever since I was little, I have always been in my head about what is the meaning of life. But I have been reading this book called The Courage to be Disliked. And it's been, you know, kind of a more popular book that's been talked about lately, but it is not a book for everyone because it's in a format. It's actually, I think it was originated in Japan, and it's structured in a conversation between a professor and a student. And the thing that I found really interesting that kind of sat with me throughout all of this is that there was a phrase that they said that was, all problems are interpersonal problems. And that really resonated with me because the more I thought about it, is like all problems are rooted in interpersonal problems, like you between somebody else, you and other people, you and your whole family, or you and just your best friend, or you and your partner, whatever it is, like all problems at the root of it come down to interpersonal problems. Because a lot of the times, even if it's something that is like your job or something, not specifically the people or something like that, you probably are staying at that job because of the expectation of somebody else, right? A lot of people stay in jobs because of pressure of their parents. And a lot of people stay in unhappy relationships because of the pressure of their family or their peers, right? You know, somebody telling them like, oh yeah, you fit in with us because you're also married or you're engaged and we're all married, you know, and or you want to have babies because everybody's telling you to have babies because that's what chapter of life you're in, or you go to college, but you don't actually really know what you want to do, but you have that expectation from your parents that you go and you do the college thing, or you have that expectation from your peers or your school, you know, whatever it is. But those are all based in other people. They're all with the pleasing or the pressure of other people. And so when we look at all of these different things, like when I've explored a lot of the stuff that I need to like heal from and do the shadow work on and move forward from, like they are all issues that I've been healing that have been between me and other people. And for you, you know, if you are listening and kind of exploring that for yourself, it's really important to kind of identify who is the root issue or what have they pressured upon you that is impacting your life in a way that's holding you back, or maybe keeping you playing small, you know, sticking to a job that may not be serving you or not actually something that's what you really want to do. I see that all the time. You know, I see people who are really comfortable in certain jobs too, and they won't move forward because that's something that gives them identity, right? But that identity is based on usually, honestly, their parents' expectations of them. That's the biggest thing that I see, like holding a lot of people back from their true like dreams and whatnot. So a lot of this stuff is really important for you to explore when it comes to how you move through your soft girl season or any chapter in your life where you are trying to do your best, move out of this cloud of whatever's bothering you so that you can kind of expand into this next chapter of your life. And so that's something that I'm personally going through. So I hope that encourages you to explore that for yourself. All right. So now we're into the episode. Thank you for hanging through all of that. You know, it is one of those times where I just felt like I needed to have a little heart-to-heart chat with you guys, especially after this big trip that I had just taken, because there's a lot that I have contemplated and absorbed and enjoyed and released throughout this whole time. So I just had to share it. So, you know, we did it. We did that. Okay, so we're going to get into today my top tips for traveling and staying on the more health-oriented side. I'm phrasing it like that because I don't want to say like my top tips for traveling healthy, because that's really objective, because there's a lot of different ways that people approach that. And oftentimes a lot of people approach that in the least healthy way, ironically. And so I want to approach it for you guys in a way where I enjoy myself, but I establish balance. Because when you're on vacation, I would assume that it's not the dominating amount of your year. If it is, you're lucky, and I wouldn't call that a vacation anymore. That's just living the good life. But when it comes to vacations, most of us, unfortunately, a lot of us only take like 4 weeks out of the year on vacation. And if when I said that, you were like, who gets 4 weeks? I don't get more than 2. You need to evaluate your relationship to work, okay? I'm just playing. But in reality, we don't take a lot of vacation time. And so in the dominating scope of your year, you should not be hyper-focusing and fixating and whatever on your perfect health habits while you are traveling. That trip should be majority spent enjoying the time. So I want to preface this whole conversation, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a moment, but I want this whole conversation to be foundationally understood that we are not trying to be as healthy as possible on our trip. I could potentially do an episode on that another time, but I don't think I would ever recommend it. And frankly, I probably won't do that unless you guys respond that you really do want to hear about that. But we're going to talk about kind of my top 4 things that I like to focus on when it comes to my mindset around being a little bit more health oriented, because it is definitely an issue for some people who go on vacation and they might just be totally unhappy with their lifestyle back home, or too restrictive, or completely just unrestrictive, but like really not like enjoying their job or the people around them or whatever. And then they go on vacation and then they just go wiling out. They just do the most of everything possible because they've been so depleted from anything quote unquote fun or balanced that it can really sabotage your health, or, you know, push you towards a lot of bad habits that you'll carry on when you get back home. That's really common, is a lot of people will just have this mindset of like, vacation, all shit thrown to the wind, like I'm not going to take care of myself at all. And then turns out that you come back and you keep doing those same habits because now you're kind of addicted to sugar again, or maybe you drink more alcohol and now your body like is craving alcohol consistently, because that happens to people when your body runs on ethanol for a lot more time than it should. And then you're stuck in kind of a hole, right, for months on end. And then suddenly you've gained 35 pounds or something like that. And you're like, oh my God, the vacation like just pushed me into this new life and I'm totally unhappy. So we don't want that to happen. Okay. So we're talking about balance in today's conversation about traveling a little bit more healthy. So I hope that all of this conversation is helpful for you. And I do always want to invite you, go to our show notes, check out the links that are on there. You can directly come follow our community on Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast or at Kaylee Loren. That's my flagship coaching page. And you can also come join my newsletter there. I have a really awesome health and wellness newsletter that I send out monthly. So if you join it now, you'll be able to get the November one, ASAP Rocky. And I will say there are some great resources on there for you, and some other affiliate discounts if you are looking for any of those things that I have listed on there. And yeah, let's jump into this episode. Okay, so like I was just saying a minute ago, the first thing that I always do when it comes to being more health oriented for travel is I set the mentality that I'm going to be thoroughly enjoying myself, but upholding a healthy balance. So weaving in healthy habits while I am still enjoying myself, and not being so rigid that if I don't get to do the thing that was a healthy habit that day that I had planned to, that the next day is totally okay to do it again, or in a couple days if like there's just no time for it, whatever it is. You just can't be that rigid, okay? Because things always change. Travel is very willy-nilly when it comes to if you even arrive on time or if your bags don't come. There's so many things that can be major curveballs when it comes to your health on trips. So you definitely want to not come into it with some perfect plan. All right. And so the biggest thing that I think is important, like I was saying before, is it's really, really healthy to not go all crazy and binge drink or eat and whatnot, because it can pose some major discomforts on the trip. For example, the biggest reason your immune system might drop when you travel is not simply just because of the travel. Of course, the altitude and the plane situation is going to put you around a lot more bugs that other people might be carrying. However, your immune system can absolutely fight those off without you even getting sick. But if you drop your immune system with a lot of sugar, a lot of alcohol means poor sleep quality. Poor sleep quality means your immune system drops a ton. And higher blood sugar affects your immune system, and it also affects your gut bacteria. So there's a lot of things that tend to happen on our first day or two of travel that can really put us at risk for getting sick. And then I don't know about you, But all the times that I travel and I've gotten immediately sick, it's like the whole trip is not, I wouldn't go as far as to say ruined. Maybe for some people it might be ruined, especially if they got something real bad, like a bad flu or whatever. But for me, then it just like immediately downgrades the trip, right? And then it sucks because you're spending all that time off from work recovering from getting sick so that you get back from your trip and you show up to work healthy again, hopefully. But some people just end up being sick for several weeks after they get sick on a trip because they're just going for so long. And then all of a sudden their immune system is like, and I'm shot. So really important that you don't just go and binge drink at least the first few days. That's usually a habit that I at least uphold because I found it to work the best for me with avoiding that immune system drop. And so that's really key. The other thing why you don't really want to go that route of just going crazy the first few days is because your body can puff up with a lot of added water retention or inflammation caused by alcohol. So your face might get all puffy and stuff, depending on how sensitive you are to it and what kind of alcohol you had. You know, usually like American wines or cheap alcohol in general they're going to have a lot more sulfites and more things that your body will be reactive, like allergically. So it'll kind of instill a histamine response, basically. And that can cause a lot of physical things that you may not really love to have. So if you don't want to be super puffy and your face look all kind of red and blotchy and eyes all kind of weird and puffy, do you know what I mean? It's like, for me, I can always tell when I'm either under rested or in that position because my eyelids are like really thin, like really like there's no space for eyeshadow, if that makes sense. They're kind of hooded. And that's always going to come for me with too much alcohol consumption too fast or not enough water or a variety of things. And mostly what I'm talking about, guys, is like swinging way too far to the crazy side, like just eating whatever you want, drinking whatever you want, not moving very much and all that kind of stuff. That's what I mean by these side effects that you might get. You might get very moody, or your energy might be subpar. So you might feel like really disinterested in doing a lot of things, or you might be crabby. You might get into more arguments with your partner or family members, and a lot of that stuff is directly impacted by how much alcohol you're consuming. The part of your brain that responds the most to the next day after alcohol drinking, where you get that cortisol reuptake thing and a whole lot of other mood influencing reactions to your neurons. I'm trying to not make it too sciencey, but regardless, a lot of people experience either depression or anxiety heighten after a lot of drinking. And especially if you're prone to anxiety or depression already, it can exacerbate those issues. And so it may not be in your best interest, especially if you're trying to enjoy your vacation, to overdo it with alcohol and stuff like that, because you may get that reaction and then it'll impact your trip overall. And again, too much sugar will put you on kind of a hangry roller coaster. Blood sugar spikes, they also influence your mood, but they also will influence whether or not you put on body fat. So if you're trying to not gain a ton of excess fat from, honestly, okay, wait, this is a really good topic. Most people are always freaking out about putting on a ton of weight on a trip. You have to be eating 3,500 calories, that's 1 pound, times a bunch, plus not moving very much, plus doing that for more than 5 to 7 days consecutively to actually risk putting on a pound of fat or more than that. There could be some metabolic situations to this that are unique that you could be putting on fat faster. But again, as long as you're not overdoing it with the food and alcohol and you are moving more than, 6,000 or 7,000 steps a day, or getting some sort of activity in, or swimming around in the pool, or walking around on the beach, or whatever. As long as you're doing more of that, I find it extremely rare that anyone actually puts on body fat. Usually what you put on at the end of a trip is 3 to 5 pounds of water weight because you're all inflamed and your water balance is all thrown off because of a lot of excess sodium or carbohydrates, etc. So typically when clients get home, I'm like, get back on your routine, increase your protein, increase your fiber, go all the way up to 85 to 100 ounces of water a day, the usual drill, have your bowel movements consistent again, and then weigh in again. And they've pretty much always lost all the weight that they thought they put on the trip. The caveat is if you eat kind of too willy-nilly for like a 2-week long or more vacation, you do pose the risk of more time consuming excess calories. And especially if you're not moving that much, you could potentially put on 3 to 5 pounds of body fat at the end of a 2 to 4 week vacation. But again, that's not the usual vacation length for most people. And usually at that point, you're traveling somewhere where you're walking a lot. Like not a lot of people go on 3 to 4 week vacations where they just stay on an all-inclusive resort the whole time. Like you'd get really bored. I would think you would get really bored at that point. So usually those longer trips are somewhere where you're walking a lot more and you're probably burning more of those excess calories. But that kind of is bringing me to the next point that I think is really important for trying to uphold a healthier balance when it comes to traveling, and that is mixing in movement wherever you can. But again, don't obsess over it. So if you can find time to walk, like for example, when my family and I go to Hawaii, my dad and I like to go on a walk in the morning before breakfast or something like that. Or my husband and I will like to walk at dinner or to and from any of the places we're going to go get meals or whatnot. And those are good ways to mix in kind of consistent movement. But sometimes, like for example, when I was on this Norwegian cruise, there wasn't a lot of space to walk on the boat when we had all day on the boat. And it wasn't a huge boat in comparison to some of the other cruises I've been on in my life. And so luckily they had a gym on the boat and I just did some time, like 20 minutes at a moderate incline on the treadmill. And that was good enough. So if there's gyms around your resort or your hotel, sometimes it's even fun. Like something I did when I went by myself to New York, I found a fitness class, like a full body workout class that was like several blocks away from my Airbnb, and I just signed up for one of those classes. That's a really fun thing to do. You get to meet some people wherever you're visiting, and you get somebody to tell you what to do, so you don't even have to think about it. Because a lot of us aren't like me, who knows how to make a workout from anything in any gym. So if you're not somebody who likes to do that, I would highly recommend you search around like on Google Maps and look at workout classes near me and see if you can find the calendars, call in, say maybe they can give you a free first day class or as a drop-in fee. That's kind of a great way to get movement in. And then it's also kind of fun because you go and you take like a workout class somewhere else. I used to do that every time I went to Austin with my sister as well, when she used to live there. And so I would definitely recommend, mixing in a few gym sessions. If you are somebody who likes to weight train, it's going to be really good, especially for any excess carbohydrates and glycogen, sugar, yada, yada, that's in your body from that. But I wouldn't do it a lot if you are somebody who's drinking a ton. If you are drinking a lot of alcohol, it can be relatively dangerous for you to be working out, especially if your muscles are dehydrated and stuff. So I would highly recommend you stick to just walking and maybe like yoga and stuff if you are having a more alcohol-oriented vacation. But I definitely recommend you do sober days on your vacation. And then on those specific days are the better days to do a gym workout session or something like that. Again, if you are somebody who's consistent with weightlifting at home, you don't really need to worry about it for the 1 or 2 weeks that you're gone on a trip. Okay. Like for me, I didn't even plan to really weightlift, but because we had gyms accessible to us, I was like, why not? I'll keep my muscles active and all that kind of stuff and help burn some of the excess carbs that I was eating, just because, I wasn't sure if I was going to get to walk a ton or not. And that's just how I naturally manage my blood sugars. So that's more of what the focus was for me. I 0% of the time was concerned about putting on excess fat or something like that. I think at this point in my mentality around trips and food and everything I know about food, I'm not the person who's hyper fixated on making sure I get to the gym and stuff so that I don't gain weight, because I know that if I were to on this vacation, then I will work on it when I get back home. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to use my time on vacation to obsess over keeping myself a certain body size or something like that. So if you're somebody who historically is always concerned about overeating or something like that, or not moving enough, that's a really good time for you to practice mindfulness when it comes to your relationship to fitness and food. Because if you are always obsessed, or you feel like your brain is obsessed over trying to burn off that food you ate or whatever, do not use movement as punishment for what you ate. That is a huge mantra that I have always pushed in my coaching and my kind of philosophy. And a lot of the people that I work alongside historically, or I have learned under, they also push that as well, because it's really important to remove yourself from that doctrination that we have to punish ourselves for what we eat or consume, whatever you want to think about it like, because that is just going to become a toxic relationship with your body the more you follow that mentality. All right. However, movement can be strategic for keeping excess weight off you if you do it in a more mindful, again, and enjoyable way, where you find hikes that you want to go do, walks or consistent walks to see the sunset wherever you're at. Again, Hawaii and a lot of those places are exceptional evenings to go walk and enjoy the sunset. So you definitely can make movement a part of something enjoyable. So that's a way that you can avoid having a lot of that excess sugar or managing the sugar spikes after big meals, because as we know, walking for 15 to 20 minutes minimum after you eat, it immensely impacts your blood sugar spike from that meal. So there's a lot of those little tips and tricks that you can kind of do with movement. However, they are not necessarily essential, and you will be okay if you don't do it every single time. All right. So mixing in movement wherever you can, but again, don't obsess. So the other thing that I think is really important to do as a travel tip is you're going to want to pack your essential daily supplements, snacks, whatever, for your trip, because sometimes it isn't always easy to know what food is going to be available for you or what's going to be served to you. It depends on how long your flight is or whatnot. And so what my clients, especially the ones that travel farther distances frequently, we've really narrowed it down to figuring out you almost always have to have some sort of protein source, and good quality protein source, with you. So whether that's like those little Chomps protein sticks, not Slim Jims, specifically Chomps, or any of those that have very minimal ingredient and are actual higher protein and no added strange seed oil fats and things like that. You're going to want those for a good quality protein. You can pack your protein powder. Guys, you can actually put pretty much anything that is not liquid into a baggie. You could write a label on it if you want to. Sometimes TSA will still stick one of the little tester things in it, whatever. That's only happened to me ever once with my protein powder, and one of my other clients. But just put it into a baggie. Just put some servings, like what I did on this last trip. And a lot of my trips is I usually will put 5 scoops of protein powder with the little scooper in a separate plastic bag, and I'll write vanilla protein powder on it or whatever. And it's super helpful, because sometimes when I am on the plane and all they have is snacks, or they have just this really poorly put together meal or something, or we only have some time at the airport and the airport doesn't have great options. It's got a Burger King, a Panda Express, and a vending machine. Then I'm all right, well, I'll find something that's got fiber maybe, or I'll just eat whatever I feel like eating there. And then I'll make sure to have a protein shake that I'll just quickly mix with water in a cup or a water bottle if I brought one, or buy one, and just chug that down. And I'll get 30 grams of protein in a single scoop. 25 to 30 grams, and that plus whatever I eat. And then that's really great, because now I've had a more rounded meal that involves good quality protein. So it's going to feed my muscles and help my metabolism and my blood sugar response, right? So protein powder is really important to bring if you are somebody who's more of a fitness girly. Honestly, I would say that anybody benefits from bringing a good quality protein powder along with them, because there is just a lot of places that flop on having enough quality protein available for you. So don't be shy. Don't be embarrassed. Bringing protein powder is honestly a pro move. The other pro move, though, is if you don't have it scooped, there's certain brands that actually sell individual baggies of their protein. A lot of the different brands have those. They kind of have them as like sample packs, but they're still serving sizes. So you can actually just buy some of those pre-packaged protein powders. The Just Ingredients brand and the brand I really like, Shanusa, and a whole lot of different brands, I think, and Sprout Living, if you're a plant-based person, they all have individual packets that make traveling with protein powder super easy. Super easy. And they'll last longer because they're not exposed to oxygen yet. So that you could, if you didn't use them on your trip, you can use them for your next trip. So that's definitely a pro tip when it comes to traveling and having enough protein on hand, because honestly, the main thing a lot of my clients and I have discovered is that controlling protein is really hard on especially like long travel days. So highly recommend that. You can also pack some of your favorite like protein bars, but honestly, I don't know, like for me personally, for being in the fitness industry for so long now, that I had my fair share of like Quest bars, and I used to try all the protein bars possible because I worked in a gym setting and I was in college. I had no time to prep myself well-rounded meals and cooking enough and all that different stuff. So I was like protein bar girly, and now I can't even look at them. I bought one on this flight home. That was a 10-hour flight, and I was much more interested in eating the little baggie of Cheez-Its that I had gotten from the stewardess or flight attendant rather, sorry. Than eating that protein bar. And I don't know what it is. I just can't eat protein bars anymore. They're just like not appealing to me, no matter what flavor. I just know they always taste the same to me. They always have like this kind of fakey, weird flavor. It's like, it's not real good quality chocolate. It's not good quality protein, and the texture is just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. But if you like protein bars, they don't bother you, definitely pack and bring some of your favorite ones, ideally ones that have less than like 10 to 12 ingredients. It's really hard to find that with protein bars, but if you can, that's better. And ideally, whey isolate protein is being the main ingredient. Not a huge fan of soy protein that they use in a lot of protein bars. It's highly GMO'd and Roundup soy crops from the US, unfortunately. So I'm not a big fan of soy protein and protein bars. But that's just my own personal opinion. It's totally okay if you do that, because if you're only having this bar because you're traveling and you don't have a lot of food, then it's only like one time out of a lot of weeks, right? So protein, have your own snacks. Really important. The other thing is you can totally get through TSA with plastic bags of blueberries and strawberries chopped up, carrots, cucumbers. A lot of those things are available to totally be brought through TSA in your backpack or your carry-on or whatever. So you can make some of your own fresh foods available for you to snack on at home and bring them with you. If it has too much liquid in it, you may be at higher risk. So, I've not tried like grapes or anything like that before, but you can bring a large majority of chopped up fruits and veggies in plastic bags onto the plane. I've never had issues with that. And you can also pre-make your own sandwiches. Again, anything that's not liquid makes it through TSA. So don't bring soup, bring a smoothie, duh. But when it comes to solid foods, you can absolutely bring your own. I think in the past, before I even made my own like little turkey roll-ups, when I was like being way too healthy all the time, I brought actually an entire prepped Tupperware of rice, chicken, and broccoli. That's when I was in my like super fitness girly at the gym, overtraining, double days kind of time, aka my early 20s. I did get through TSA just fine with a pre-prepped Tupperware of food. So the limit does not exist, except for it does exist, I guess, when it comes to liquids. But you can totally prep a lot of food at home and bring it with you. That would be another pro tip for traveling on the plane, especially if you have dietary restrictions. It's never a good idea to just risk it for the biscuit. not eat anything, because then you're going to land somewhere and you're going to be ravenous and you're going to be like, just give me the first thing that I can find. I'm starving. And that could set off your trip down like a bad rabbit hole of just eating whatever is near you and whatever's the most gluttonous thing and sounds good in the moment or whatever, because that's really what happens is people let themselves get too hungry and then they make the choices that they end up regretting later on. So you don't have to go down that path if just prep yourself some snacks or some food or some meals. Okay. So aside from that, daily supplements. I always pack my B vitamins, sometimes my daily vitamin if I'm on a cycle with one. No, I don't take daily vitamins every day, 12 months out of the year. I actually only do a daily vitamin for like a 3-month cycle once or twice a year because I get a lot of the nutrients from the food I eat. And I also know that I don't need it year round. But because I am still recovering my liver and stuff from birth control use and whatnot, I do take a good quality B complex every couple of days. Again, I don't take it daily. And sometimes I will travel with some things that are like immune boosters. Like I'll always pack in I have a little travel pill thing. I'll put some 3 milligram melatonin, zinc, like a 5 or 10 milligram zinc, fish oil sometimes, because sometimes you don't eat enough of the good quality omega-3s. And, it kind of depends on some other things. Like sometimes I'll bring this supplement for myself that has like histamine response. So if I have been partaking in libations that I know that my body will get a histamine response to, I will bring that supplement. It has like NAC, quercetin, and several other things in it that are beneficial for the body for helping manage a histamine response. So sometimes I'll pack that with me, like I brought that on this last trip. So there's a lot of different reasons to pick and choose which supplements you want to bring. But I would say just bring like your 3 staples. You don't need to bring the whole stack because you're just going to be on a vacation for a week or two. So bring whatever prescriptions or whatnot, obviously, are essential that you need, but also just, narrow it down to your foundational daily supplements because you will be okay if you don't take all of them. But I also recommend that you do bring them because I think it's important for keeping your body in a good nutrient balance because B vitamins are really good for your energy and whatnot, and especially if you have jet lag. Melatonin is super key. Melatonin, good quality melatonin, not that cheapy stuff. Get some good quality melatonin from like a good trusted brand and like Pure Encapsulations or, oh gosh, there's so many brands, Thorne, all that kind of stuff. It does make a difference what quality of melatonin you get for how it affects you and if it works or not. So that's important too if you go somewhere where you're going to have jet lag because it helps you get used to a different sleep cycle faster and it can just naturally stimulate it. I do like to tell people for melatonin, what I had learned from my courses in the world of sleep cycle and all of that is you don't want to exceed 5 milligrams of melatonin at a time. You really never want to go above 5. Okay. So if you can stay in that 2 to 3 milligram range and you take that around 8 p.m., a few hours before you're going to go to sleep, because it's supposed to help you get drowsy and tell your body it's time to sleep. That's the point of melatonin. You stimulate it also in the morning by putting your eyes in natural sunlight, and that helps you tell your body, okay, this is when I'm supposed to be awake. So this is when my cortisol is supposed to show up. And then at night, you can use some of that artificial melatonin with your supplement around 7 or 8 p.m. to start telling your brain, okay, I know normally I'm awake if there's a time difference from where you usually live, but I'm trying to tell myself like, okay, now this is the time where I need to downshift and go to sleep. And it usually should make you feel sleepy. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about melatonin in a future episode because I think there's a lot of misinformation and misuse of melatonin. That's something to stay tuned for if that's something you've always wondered about. But those would be my immediate recommendations that I've always learned from professionals is that you can use 2 or 3 milligrams one time a night. Some people say 1 milligram of melatonin every hour until you go to sleep, starting at like 5 p.m. So there's different protocols, but just keep it light, okay? Because you can overdo it when it comes to putting your brain into a position where it's no longer creating the melatonin itself and it's relying on the supplementation. So do not let that happen to you, but it can be massively helpful. Like it's helped me and my husband get out of this jet lag zone so much faster. Okay. So it can be a really powerful tool, and I always travel with it, especially when there's going to be a time difference. That's significant. All right. But okay. So just to recap on that, pack your essential daily supplements, pack your snacks, pack your protein. Those are really important, healthy things that you can do, healthy habits that will really kind of keep you on track, even if, you know, you're participating in things that are not your usual things that you do for your health when you're back home. Something else that I want to add while we're talking about packing is you can totally benefit from packing some workout or recovery items. So sometimes that can be a huge lifesaver. Like if you are traveling somewhere that has a really crappy gym, or, you know, you are sitting in a really horribly tight center seat your whole flight. If you can pack, like if you get a collapsible foam roller, which they make some really cool ones nowadays that actually completely collapse flat and they can totally fit in your suitcase really easily, or your backpack or your carry-on bag, whatever. And they work very well, the same as a normal foam roller, but they're smaller, of course. They're going to be the shorter foam rollers. But those can be great for really helping you stretch yourself out, crack your back if you've been like stuck in a weird position. Like that can be a really powerful tool to travel with that helps you with your overall health. You can bring your tiger tails, if you don't know what that is, like a muscle roller, like a stick roller, but it basically has handles and a little rolly thing down the middle, like a foam roller. And you can self-roll yourself and your muscles. You can do it if you're sitting in your chair on the plane, or you can do it when you get back home and you're in your hotel or whatever it is. Those can be really helpful for helping you stretch yourself out and kind of break the fascia down, move it back to where it belongs, which can help your overall circulation and all that. Something that I always travel with, even though I don't often use them anymore, is a loop band and a flat exercise band, because you can do a ton of full body activation stuff with just those two bands. So sometimes if I feel like I just want to like pop out a little activating workout routine or full body thing, there's so many things that you can do with just those, and they barely take up any space. If anybody says like, oh, but I don't want to lose space in my suitcase, literally those things take up like no space. They're like less space than a pair of socks. So those would be my recommendations, is like a flat stretchy therapy band and a loop band that can go around your knees. I usually go with the thinner type, not the really fat thick type, but you know, if you have the fat thick ones, that's totally okay as well. But whatever works for you, I would say that's always a good habit just to have on hand, because you never know when you're going to kind of want that extra resistance or something that you can just do in your room and feel a little bit better, feel a little bit more activated and stuff, especially after long flights, guys. Like my glutes are always so deactivated. Like I try everything to keep them active throughout those flights, but they're just so deactivated. And sometimes they're just like really sore as well. And I always find that like doing some stretch routine and whatnot, and then activating them really helps me feel a little bit better and a little bit more balanced. So those would be kind of easy workout or recovery items that I recommend you pack if you're trying to stay a little bit more healthy on a trip, especially in the movement category. All right, guys, so I'm going to finish with two things that are actually more mindset oriented rather than nutrition or fitness. So this second to last one is super key, because honestly, if you don't do this, you're probably going to kind of have a harder time upholding the other health practices on your trip, and it could completely just like derail your trip potentially. And that is upholding boundaries where you need it the most. So a lot of us tend to travel with our partners, with friends or family, right? Most of the time, this doesn't apply as often for solo travelers. Because if you've ever solo traveled, I mean, honestly, it's one of my favorite things I ever did when I was in my 20s, because it really makes you comfortable and confident being alone and knowing you can do those things on your own. But it also is really peaceful because you get to do whatever you want to do and you don't have to answer to anyone else and you don't have to deal with other people's drama. So solo travelers don't have to worry about this one as much, honestly, but most of us are not solo traveling. So where this boundary concept comes in is we really want to make sure that we either set boundaries. They don't have to be verbal. You don't have to announce it to whoever you're going with or whatnot, but set boundaries with yourself on like how much alcohol do you want to consume a day. You know, are you going to participate in like social things where people want to have mimosas early in the morning or a nightcap at night or any of those kind of typical habits a lot of people partake in, especially on vacations? And or you can partake in those, but if you don't want to drink, you just have to stay mindful and be prepared for the flack people are going to give you for not drinking. Honestly, alcohol is one of the strangest social things that we have in our society today because it's a class 1 carcinogen, meaning it will cause cancer if you consume it consistently. And it is so socially accepted to drink. And it is so socially not accepted to decline drinking. I mean, honestly, it's getting better. And there's a lot of people who don't necessarily say that, but it is really uncommon to have a server go around a table, everybody order an alcoholic beverage, and then you don't. And people be like, why? Why are you not drinking? Are you pregnant? Or are you like being stiff? Or like a whole bunch of different reasons and comments. Like if you've ever been in a situation where you've declined to drink because you're trying to be healthier or whatever, and or you just don't want it. If you've not had somebody make a comment or ask you why you're not drinking, you are one of the rare few, because almost all of my clients, especially the ones that have cut out drinking altogether for periods of time or whatnot, they are always reporting back to me how hard it is with the peer pressure because people are just like almost emotionally attacked feeling, being like, why aren't you drinking? Or you're making me out to feel like a bad person. You know, it's so weird. So mindfulness and mind setting boundaries around how much alcohol you want to consume and or when you consume it matters a lot. Nightcaps, horrible alcohol practice, especially on trips, because they absolutely impact your sleep quality. Again, it will drop your immune system. It won't let you get into deep sleep, and you'll probably have a lot more restless of a night because a lot of people tend to get sweats, like night sweats and stuff, when their body's processing the alcohol out overnight. So even if people feel like it helps them fall asleep faster and whatnot, it is always going to be a negative nighttime practice. So I highly recommend you avoid nightcaps. Same thing with early morning alcohol. I really don't recommend it for if you want to have a better time on your trip. Maybe if there's like one day where you partake in it, that's fine, but observe how you feel throughout the day and how you feel the rest of the evening or the next day, because sometimes setting your metabolism off with an alcoholic beverage in the beginning of your day or the end of your day is going to be very problematic for, again, sleep quality, your mood, your skin, your hydration, what food choices you make, all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, tends to do that. Again, if like you hardly drink alcohol, like for me, I pretty much only drink alcohol on special occasions now. I do set boundaries to where I don't like to consume more than 2, sometimes 3 in a day. And even at that, it kind of really depends on the quality. Like I'm very picky about which drinks I pick most of the time. Sometimes I'll throw in a little funsy coffee, like a Spanish coffee or something like that in there. But in reality, I don't drink very often anymore. And so for me, vacations are a little bit more of a relaxation of that. However, I do still hold kind of a mental cap on, okay, this is my second drink, or okay, this is my third drink of the day. I'm good now. You know what I mean? So those are all healthy practices that you can implement into your travel or your vacation. And that'll be really important for feeling better and feeling your best and whatnot for your whole trip. So I definitely recommend that. Saying no to desserts or getting seconds, or, if you're at an all-inclusive resort or something like that, like you don't need to eat your way to get your value out of what you paid. That's why honestly, I don't really recommend all-inclusive resorts. I think you're overpaying for what you really get, because a lot of those resorts drop the quality of the food and the drinks that they give you because it's all inclusive, because a place is always going to make a profit. They're always trying to make a profit, right? So from all of my friends and stuff who've been to all inclusive resorts, like the drink quality is complete crap. They use like really low quality well liquor, and they don't put a lot of it in there. They just put a lot of mixer and stuff. And so you're drinking a lot of sugar and low quality alcohol, and you're usually eating a lot of, again, lower quality food and in higher volumes, because you're, again, like most people say, they're trying to get their money's worth out of an all-inclusive. And so ultimately, I think they're kind of the hardest way to stay healthy on a trip, or coming back home from a trip in a healthier position. So I don't really recommend all-inclusive. And that, I guess, includes like certain cruise lines. Like this Norway cruise line was very, I would say, a little bit more health oriented. I mean, I did have the option to get like a burger every day, but I didn't. I actually didn't even get a burger any of the days. I thought about it one of the days, but most of their fare provided by the ship was like Norwegian oriented. So it was a lot of seafoods and vegetables and, potatoes and stuff like that. So it actually was in smaller portions, which was really nice. So that ship was not as hard to stay on the healthier side, but some places, like I've been on a Carnival cruise line, which was just like a little weekender booze cruise, or I've been on Royal Caribbean. Those cruise lines are all inclusive, and they have a whole bunch of food available all day long to eat. And so it can be a little bit challenging to try to keep those calories in a more maintenance zone when you're in that kind of situation. So that would be kind of one of those areas where, having the mindset, setting boundaries, like being like, oh, I'm going to have one dessert every other night. I'm not going to have it every single night, or something like that, but not necessarily making food rules. Again, it's really hard to kind of toe the line to where you're setting boundaries, or are you making a rule? Because a lot of people will stay into these very rigid mentalities around food because they feel like, oh, well, I need structure, or else I'll just be lost. But unfortunately, if you try to live a life of structure all the time, life is so unstructured that you're going to fail at some point, and then it can crash and burn, or it can just completely go to the worst extent. I mean, that is kind of the same thing as crashing and burning, but more of what I mean is just that you have to start to get comfortable with loosening the reins on the control you want to have. And that means food rules. You need to loosen your control over food rules on everything, because food rules are very limiting. They're very toxic in our mind, and they cause more harm than good. So I would definitely recommend that you set boundaries around your food that are healthy mentalities, but don't make food rules out of everything. Just because you had a dessert last night doesn't mean you need to run longer on the treadmill or some junk like that. Like those are bad practices that will really mess with your relationship with your body and your food and all that jazz. So just remember, it's also okay to not finish your whole plate. And you don't have to eat a bunch of little snacky things in between meals just because other family members or people you're with or your partner wants to do that. You can just, do what feels right to your body and what you need. The other thing that's important I wanted to talk about was taking space for yourself when it comes to setting good, healthy boundaries for staying in a healthier space on a trip. So especially if you're with your family or your siblings or whatever, we all need space for ourselves when it comes to a lot of those things, right? So it's okay if you need to step off and go do something. Sometimes it's nice to go on a hike by yourself if everybody else doesn't want to, or go to the gym, or go get a massage if nobody wants to pay for that, but you want time for yourself. Go and do those things. Like taking an hour for yourself, like that's 100% fine. Like if they're not okay with that, then that's another issue to deal with, because, just because you're going on a trip with other people doesn't mean that they own your time with them. Like everybody needs a healthy amount of time by themselves or doing whatever they need, as well as like together. So I'm not saying like go and be like, I need to just be alone this entire second half of the trip. Like, unless that is something you need, and if like, if that was the expectation that was set that you can go do your own thing, then that's good. Go do that. But more so, I just mean like, if you enjoy your family time and you want to spend time with them, but you also need a little space to yourself, like, just take that space for yourself. You don't want to come back from your trip and need like a staycation from your vacation just because everybody was so exhausting and you spent way too much time with each other and you're just burnt out and you never got any time for yourself. Like, you never got time for yourself because you didn't take it. So you need to go and take that time for yourself and make sure that you understand that all selfishness is not innately bad. That is a really bad thing that we've been taught growing up, especially for us girls, is that we think that doing anything for ourselves, aka selfish things, is bad. And that's not true. Okay. You can't fill a cup from an empty cup, right? You have to refill your cup some way. And the only way to refill your cup is doing selfish acts. And so therefore, having moments of selfishness is actually healthy. So you do really need to make sure that you have that mentality when you go on trips and that you take space for yourself, because that's really important for keeping healthy mentality, not wanting to chop your partner or any of your family members' heads off, etc. So definitely do that, okay? You need to do that. Another thing to close out this section of the conversation is that you can end or avoid conversations with whoever you're traveling with that you know might ruin the trip. So don't try to stir the pot with your aunt or something like that who's got completely different political opinions than you or something like that. Just avoid those conversations. Avoid weird things. I know sometimes it's really hard, especially when you're around people with differing opinions or different lifestyle choices or whatever. Or maybe they're that kind of person that likes to make comments about you or about other people that you're close to, like your partner or something. And they're making little comments to kind of like mask their insecurities about themselves, and so they'll put them on you. In reality, I'm just going to say it like that because that's really what it is. A lot of people make mean comments about you because it's something that they're struggling with in themselves. And, that's happened to me on trips, and it's one of those things where at first it can be really annoying and it can just like linger around in your brain for too long, but you have to just remember people do those things because they have those thoughts for themselves. All right. And so remembering that you are not defined by things that somebody will be saying about you or how they're comparing to you or a variety of those things. That happens a lot. I've heard from a lot of my clients, especially on family trips. There's a lot of weird things that people will say to each other, especially when you have that much time together, and it can really bother you or ruin your trip, or it could not. So the best thing you can do is have that space and boundary of just avoiding conversations that you can tell are going to go in that direction that could ruin your trip, or just end those conversations in general and move forward from it and just like let it go. Because engaging in it and trying to encourage more of it is always going to be a huge mistake. So I would say that is where you can really benefit from setting boundaries and upholding them where you need it most to kind of keep yourself in that healthy, happy mindset, right? All right. The last bit of that is also practicing saying no to the things that you really don't want to do, what you really don't want to see, what you really don't want to participate in, etc. So this is something as an adult that I've found to be a little bit more tangible. Sometimes when you're really young, it's really hard to say no to those things because your family picks and chooses everything that you do, right? But if you are an adult traveling with your adult siblings, adult parents, adult cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever, friends, other friend couples, if somebody wants to go and do something that you really don't want to do, you don't have to do it. Again, that's one of those things that's kind of like taking space for yourself. You don't have to participate in everything that everybody does all the time. That's actually something that, again, I think we've kind of been indoctrinated to doing because we've been basically, most of us have been raised to be people pleasers, right? And just be agreeable and move along and do what everybody else wants to do. But in reality, you end up dishonoring yourself every time that you do something like that. If it's something that's like, I don't really want to do this, but it's not that bad, so I'm going to go along because everybody else is doing it, sure, go ahead and do that. But if there's something that you just fundamentally just really don't want to do, you really don't want to spend the money on, whatever it is, just don't do it. You're going to feel better that you stayed true to yourself, and it's going to be fine, because then the people who went wanted to do it and got to do it, and the people who didn't want to go didn't do it and they were happier. So that's okay. So I think that is the last thing that I really wanted to say on here is, if you really don't want to do something, you're going to be much happier and have a better mentality long-term saying no to those things. And it's okay for you not to. And just remind people, if they have a fuss because they're like, oh, well, you're just avoiding this or that on our trip or whatever. It's like, no, I just actually don't want to do that thing. And that should be okay. Like, if I don't want to do this thing, I shouldn't have to do it, especially if you're an adult. Okay. So that is something really important that I definitely wanted to end that boundaries conversation on when it comes to mindset, of trying to stay in a healthier mindset throughout your trip. Because your mindset and your mentality and everything that goes on in your brain will dictate whether or not you're so stressed or so frustrated or so angry that you go and drink all night, or you go binge eat, or you go party out too late, too frequently, or whatever it is that can be a vice that is a challenge for these healthier oriented habits on your trip. A lot of that stuff stems from, again, interpersonal relationships. So that's something that I think is really important as well. And it's actually kind of interesting to me that that seems to be a common theme as I'm recording this podcast, is that a lot of it is really managing not only the trip itself, but who you're with. Because I have absolutely seen, especially for a ton of my clients when they travel, especially with family, that a lot of things become more challenging or go awry due to the different personalities along on that trip. So I hope that a lot of these things that we've talked about, whether it was with your food habits, with your fitness or your movement, or with your mentality, that they all are helpful for you to better navigating healthier habits while you're traveling, because a lot of that is going to be super key for coming back from your trip and feeling pretty good about yourself and getting back into your routine pretty easily. The final thing is, remember, don't be that guy. Don't obsess over your body and the food that you're eating the entire vacation. Enjoy the moment, be present, share love, explore wherever you're at, have as much fun as you can, and really be present in that experience, okay? So the worst thing you can do on a trip is obsessing over your body, how you look, how it's fluctuating, all these different things. In the end of the day, they don't mean anything. It's the memories that you make with the people you're with and how you feel about them and where you're exploring and about yourself. Those are the things that matter the most. So hyperfixating on how your body looks and what food you eat and all that jazz is really going to take away from that experience. So, all right, Rebel, that's it for today's episode. Share this episode to your Instagram story or send it to a bestie who you think needs to hear it. If you're going on a big trip soon, or if somebody you know is going on a big trip and you think some of this would be helpful for them for setting up a healthier trip ahead, definitely send it. And I would absolutely love it. And we really definitely need more good reviews on Apple or Spotify or wherever you are listening right now, because it helps expose us to more listeners. We always love to hear your feedback as well, of course, but it absolutely would help us if you could just take a minute and make a little review for us, especially if you're listening from Apple Podcasts. That would mean the world to us. So thank you so much if you do take the time to do that, personally from me and of course from Emily, our editor. So as always, celebrate your strength and nourishment, walk with confidence, and I'll catch you next week on another episode of Rebel Wellness. What did you think about that episode? If you enjoyed it, I hope that you would come join my community on Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast, or my coaching page at Kaylee Loren, or both. I would love to see your name pop up on my new follows list. I might say hello if I catch you. And I would also like to invite you to come check out my website, coachkales.com, if you're interested in seeing any more of the educational learning resources I have created for you. I have a whole ton of amazing free downloads that you can dip your toe in the water of what working with me looks like. And if you are really vibing with what I have to say and how I teach it, come explore my courses that are available for purchase. They are all do it yourself. In the near future, I plan to have some awesome group coaching that will be all live, so stay tuned for that. And the best way to know when I'm going to launch those is through my monthly wellness newsletter, which is my hand-curated, not AR-generated, monthly all things health and wellness newsletter that I created to be your new favorite resource for staying up to date with the latest in the health world, self-care resources that I've created, and a bunch of the clean beauty picks that I personally use myself, and a whole lot more, as well as early access and discounts to anything that I create in the future for specifically my newsletter sign up. So if you'd like to sign up, head to coachkales.com and add yourself to my mailing list. Last but not least, I would absolutely love it if you would help our podcast grow by simply sharing a rating or review wherever you stream and are listening to me right now, and share it on your social medias or text it to some friends or family members if this episode resonated and was something that you think could help somebody else, because I really would love to help anybody in your circle if I've been helping you. So I absolutely am so grateful that you're here. And if you listened all the way through, you are a real one. So, all right, Rebel, until next episode.